Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. Luffy, after 100 years, this is something that seems impossible, but Luffy became the sun god, and in 100 years, he will be more powerful than ever, but not in the way you imagine. I will reveal everything in today's video. I hope for your support to help our crew win, and to do so, you just need to click the thumbs up button, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. By doing this, you will win an incredible devil fruit, so just comment which fruit you want. Guys, one of the biggest questions that One Piece raises, even if indirectly, is what happens to the great figures after their era ends. After all, Joy Boy existed 800 years ago, but his legacy was erased by the world government, his promises were left unfulfilled, and the world doesn't even know what he truly represented. Luffy, on the other hand, has a huge impact on the present, but what will be left of him in 100 years? Will his legacy be erased like Joy Boy's, or will he truly change everything to the point of being remembered for centuries? The first thing that needs to be analyzed is the relationship between Luffy and Joy Boy. Chapter 1044 was a game changer in this regard, as it revealed that the Gomu Gomu no Mi is actually the Hito Hito no Mi model, Nika. This means that Luffy didn't just inherit Joy Boy's will, but he also has a direct connection to the legendary sun god Nika. When Zunesha says that Joy Boy has returned, it's clear that this isn't just a symbolic succession, but a real event, as if the essence of Joy Boy has awakened in Luffy. This leads us to the issue of time. If Joy Boy existed 800 years ago and has only now returned, there's a pattern of cycles repeating. This could mean that even if Luffy's journey comes to an end, his will and impact won't disappear. On the contrary, perhaps the world will enter a new cycle where his presence continues to influence events, even if he is no longer active. But is there a possibility that Luffy could live more than 100 years? Normally, an ordinary human wouldn't have this ability. However, One Piece has already shown that there are ways to extend life. In chapter 967, we see that Zunesha, giant elephant, has been alive for over 1,000 years. This proves that some creatures can exist for long periods without losing their vitality. Additionally, there are characters like Dr. Kureha, who is 141 years old and still active. If medical techniques continue to evolve, Luffy could end up having a much longer life than expected. Another point that raises this possibility is Luffy's own fruit. If the Hito Hito no Mi model, Nika, really grants him divine abilities, perhaps this includes abnormal longevity. After all, it was never explained whether Nika was an immortal being or just a legendary warrior. If the nature of this Akuma no Mi is tied to joy and freedom, it could be that its user lives as long as they can keep the spirit alive. Even if Luffy doesn't live that long, his impact on the world will be gigantic. If we look at the promises he made, we can see that he is correcting Joy Boy's failures. In chapter 649, when Luffy promises Shirahoshi that he will protect Fishman Island until Noah fulfills its true purpose, it's clear that he is taking on the responsibility that Joy Boy couldn't fulfill. This means that even if he is no longer physically present after a century, the changes he caused will have lasting effects. If we think about the possibility that the D is something much bigger than just a name passed down from generation to generation, perhaps Luffy represents a cycle that never ends. If Joy Boy failed 800 years ago, but his return happened now, who can guarantee that 100 years from now, Luffy's will won't awaken again in someone else? Even Whitebeard in chapter 576 said that someone will inherit Roger's will and that these things can't be stopped. Perhaps Luffy's greatest legacy isn't just his actions, but ensuring that the world never returns to what it once was. But will his legacy be preserved or erased? If the world government tried to hide the existence of Joy Boy, there is a possibility they might try to do the same with Luffy. However, the world of One Piece is at a point where the truth is coming to light. Vegapunk revealed valuable information in chapter 1066, and the search for the true history is growing more intense. This means that if Luffy truly changes everything, it will be much harder to erase his existence. I also believe that the question of what Luffy's legacy will be after 100 years doesn't have a definitive answer. Perhaps he will live longer than we imagined. Perhaps his name will be passed down from generation to generation. Or perhaps the very idea of freedom that he represents will continue to. However, the world of One Piece is at a point where the truth is coming to light. Vegapunk revealed valuable information in chapter 1066, and the search for the true history is growing more intense. This means that if Luffy truly changes everything, it will be much harder to erase his existence. I also believe that the question of what Luffy's legacy will be after 100 years doesn't have a definitive answer. Perhaps he will live longer than we imagined. Perhaps his name will be passed down from generation to generation. Or perhaps the very idea of freedom that he represents will continue to exist through other people. But one thing is certain, unlike Joy Boy, boy who was forgotten. Luffy is creating an impact so great that it will be practically impossible to erase him from history. We also need to consider a crucial point: how the power of the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika, associated with the sun god Nika, can not only change the present, but also ensure that Luffy's legacy endures for centuries, even after his departure. If this fruit indeed has a direct connection to immortality, or with supernatural abilities that transcend human limits, we might be talking about something much bigger than just a physical power. Luffy's true inheritance isn't just in his strength, but in the idea of freedom, joy, and revolution that he awakens in everyone around him. In a broader vision, his legacy could create an impact far beyond his life, influencing future generations in ways we can't even predict. First, we need to consider the context of longevity in One Piece. As we mentioned earlier, the world of One Piece has creatures and characters that defy the limits of human age, such as Zunesha, who lived for millennia without losing vitality, or Dr. Kureha, who at 141 years old still demonstrates impressive vitality. These anomalies in the world of One Piece suggest that there are ways to live much longer than would be possible for an ordinary human. However, the question is, could Luffy's fruit, with its divine power and connection to Nika, be the key to extending his life in an unusual way? Considering that Nika is a being connected to joy, freedom, and divine nature, it is plausible to imagine that the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika grants exceptional longevity to its user, perhaps even something close to immortality, or a life prolonged to the point of seeming eternal. We must not forget that in the world of One Piece, the powers of Akuma no Mi can completely alter the laws of nature. This is evident in other fruits that grant extraordinary abilities, such as Dracul Mihawk's Yoru, which has unique characteristics regarding its resistance and strength. In Luffy's case, his fruit not only grants extraordinary strength, but also has the ability to transform and shape reality in a unique way. However, it's important to question, would Luffy truly live longer than expected just through his fruit? Or is there something deeper at play? The true nature of Nika could be the key to Luffy's longevity. Perhaps the fact that the fruit represents the god of freedom, joy, and revolution allows it to grant an existence beyond the physical limitations of humans, giving Luffy a longer lifespan, or at the very least, remarkable resistance to aging. However, even if Luffy doesn't have eternal life, his essence, his will, and the ideals he represents will certainly live on. Even if he doesn't live past 100 years, the freedom he seeks and the bonds he forms with others have the potential to permanently transform the world around him. His impact will not only be immediate, but will have repercussions that echo through generations. Luffy's legacy and the transformation of the world. Now, let's address the most important part. What will Luffy's legacy be after his death? The story of One Piece revolves around freedom, dreams, and the fight against the oppressions defined by the world government. Luffy's legacy is not only in his victories or heroic deeds, but in what he represents. Luffy embodies the idea of a new beginning, a world free from the shackles that bind people. His fight is not just for wealth or to claim a title, but for the pursuit of true freedom for all people, regardless of their origin, race, or social position. This vision is the true key to understanding the impact he will have in the future. When we think about the possibility of a world without the world government or the old power structures, it is hard to ignore the role that Luffy will play in the destruction of this oppressive system. His legacy will be the inspiration for future heroes, new leaders who will seek to build a better world. Furthermore, the idea of freedom that he represents is something that will be passed on not just through his actions, but by his very existence. As someone who challenges the status quo, Luffy will become a symbol of resistance and a beacon for those who fight for a more just world. The possibility of new Luffys in the future. If indeed the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika represents the spirit of an immortal being or a cosmic force that transcends time, then we cannot rule out the idea that Luffy's legacy, just like Joy Boy's legacy, will be passed on through others. This could mean that Luffy's will, like Roger's and Joy Boy's, would be able to reborn in a new bearer, someone who would continue his fight for freedom and justice. However, this reincarnation wouldn't be literal, but rather a succession of ideals and actions that go beyond a single person. This concept of inheriting the will is central to the philosophy of the One Piece world. Joy Boy, for example, failed to fulfill his mission, but that doesn't mean his cause died with him. Joy Boy's will was symbolically inherited by Luffy, and if Luffy also fails at some point in his journey, his spirit will continue to inspire future generations of pirates and leaders. Even Whitebeard had said in One Piece that Roger's will and the idea of the One Piece would not not die but would be passed on as a cycle that would never end. This cycle can be interpreted as a cosmic force, representing the eternal struggle for freedom, dreams, and truth. With each generation, someone like Luffy may emerge to continue this legacy, challenging oppressive forces, raising the flags of freedom, and promoting a true revolution. This is the great impact that Luffy could leave for the future, a new era of freedom where the ideals he represents will no longer be suppressed or erased. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.